Hello and welcome once again to the video. A series of videos where I take just a simple look at each Grand Prix in the 2024 Formula One World Championship, just from a fan's perspective. Nothing too technical, basically. My usual routine is to make a rundown of the finishing order, and then the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, and then the rundown of the Constructors' Championship. So let us begin. I'm just trying to think what round number. Is it round number? I'm sure it's round number 13, wasn't it? Pretty sure it's round 13. I think it's round 13. So, Hungary, the Hungaroring in Budapest. A circuit that is, I think it is the longest unbroken run out of any current circuit. Would it be? Has there been a Hungarian Grand Prix every year? What about during the pandemic? I can't remember if there was one in the pandemic. And what about Monza? Silverstone has not been unbroken as long, I don't think. Wasn't the British Grand Prix in 1993 at Donington Park? Anyway, it's been going since 1986. I remember the first race. Won by PK, I believe. I also remember the 87 race when Mansell, a wheel nut came off his tyre, off his wheel, about 3 laps before the end of the race, when he was leading the race by a full minute over his teammate Nelson Piquet, which is yet another retirement in 1987 for Mansell in his championship hunt, which failed. And of course the 89 race, the famous 89 race, where Mansell came from 12th on the grid to win. And then the 1990 race where Thierry Boutsen led away from pole position and was slower than the cars behind him, including Senna, but he managed to hold off Senna for the entire race, 2-hour race. And they just went around, the top sort of 10 cars just went around in a train for the whole race. The races are a lot more exciting now. Back in the old days, back in the when the circuit was first around in the late 80s and early 90s, all throughout the 90s really, the races were not particularly interesting. But modern cars are able to make the track their own, and it's no longer the disliked circuit that it used to be years ago. Right, so here we go. First place. Oh dear, look, it always happens with this pen. Piastri. Norris, as usual. Hamilton. Let's make sure that's in focus. There we go. Good. I think that's in focus. Fourth was Leclerc. Fifth, Verstappen. Sainz. Perez. Russell. Tsunoda. So in the championship we have Verstappen on 265, Norris 189, Leclerc 162, Sainz, there's 5 for Piastri, Piastri 149, Hamilton 125, Perez 124. Shall I just check the focus again? Okay. 8th is Russell. 116. Alonso 45. Stroll 24. Okay. Constructors. Red Bull 389. We've got 338 for McLaren. Ferrari 322. Mercedes 241. Aston Martin 69. RB 33. Haas 27. Alpine 9. Williams 4. 0 for Sauber. Okay. So, what did we think of that race? Or more accurately, what did I think of that race? First and foremost, let's just put down fastest lap for Russell. Okay. Well, yet another incredibly interesting and eventful and controversial race. It's fantastic at the moment. It's just like 2021. The big difference between this year and all the excitement and controversy in every race and everything, the big difference between this and any other year that I can remember is that normally when you get these championships where every race seems to have something to talk about afterwards, some big controversy or an accident or something like that, it's always normally because there are 2 drivers or 3 drivers at the front fighting for the championship. Instead, we've got one person way out front. Yes, others can still catch him, but there isn't a tight championship battle yet. And yet every race is being fought over as if there is a tight championship battle. There is now for the constructors, due to Perez's form, but in the drivers' championship, it should be fairly relaxed for Verstappen, but of course it's a long season. There's still 11 races left, so he's obviously thinking in the future, look, I can still be closed down, but it's just unusual to get this much excitement and controversy at this stage in a championship when there is still just one driver way out front. Russell and Perez recovered. Perez 7th, Russell 8th, a sort of recovery anyway, due to their qualifying mishaps. Russell, on his second qualifying run, and not enough fuel was put in for 3 runs, 3 laps, 3 fast laps. But as Russell says himself, he put the team in that position by doing a lackluster first stint in the qualifying, and that's why he ended up going out in Q1, which is terrible. And Perez smashed his car to pieces going off in the wet, which anyone can do. It's just really unfortunate that it was Perez that did it. Anyone can do that. But if Verstappen did it, no one would be thinking, oh, that's terrible, get Verstappen out of the team, you know. Unfortunately for Perez, he's right on the edge. And when you're right on the edge, a slight little thing like that, I say slight, it was a big accident and very damaging, but for his race and the team and everything, but slight as in an easy mistake to make. When you make a mistake like that is actually quite an easy one to make, unfortunately, it just makes people go, oh yeah, there you go, it's him again. Same thing with Sargeant when he crashed a few races ago. And it was like, yep, there you go, Sargeant again. What was it, the last race at Silverstone? I don't know. But if, say, Norris was to crash, it would just be, oh, he's crashed, you know, there would be no judgment on him. But the likes of Perez and Sargeant are right on the edge of extinction. And so therefore, anything they do is magnified. Now, I don't know whether they will replace Perez after the summer break. Are they able to do that? Often these contracts have performance clauses built into them, but it'd be strange if they have one during the year. But then again, Red Bull did get rid of, or should I say, I'll put it more politely, they did exchange Kvyat for Verstappen partway through the 2016 season. And of course, Verstappen then won his very first race in Red Bull in Spain. So they have done it in the past. Maybe maybe Lawson. I don't think Tsunoda. I think he's driving well, but I think he's driving well because he's in a lower car. I don't think he has the mental composure to be able to cope with being in a Red Bull alongside Verstappen, whereas Lawson, I think, does. I think he has the mental strength to be able to cope with that. So for me, it would be Lawson. But they also don't want a driver to be taking loads of points off Verstappen. So they want a driver that's just going to finish second and third, or just one place behind Verstappen in each race is basically what they want. Right, so should I actually describe the race, or should I just go straight in with what I'm thinking about it? I mean, they pretty much all started on mediums, didn't they? Russell and Perez were on hards because they were further down the grid. We had that start, didn't we? Nice feisty start. Yet again, Norris having a bad start. I always say it. He either has a bad start off the grid, or a bad lap out of the pits when he's just had a pit stop, or a bad restart after a safety car. He's just not very good at going 0 to 60, basically. But once he's up to speed, he's shown in about the last 6 or 7 races that he's the quickest one. And he was the quickest again today, but he didn't show it until the final stint, unfortunately. And by then, they were in this position where he had to hand the position back. So let's just quickly mention that, basically. Well, not quickly, but I'll mention that. Piastri and Norris. Why on earth did they bring Norris in first? I know the official reason is because they were covering off against Hamilton. But when Norris came out of his pit stop, he was still 5 seconds ahead of Hamilton. And in a much quicker car. So why not just bring in Piastri at that point and then Norris the following lap? Instead, by bringing in Norris first, they probably lost Norris the race. It seems counterintuitive, but by giving Norris that advantage of allowing him to do the undercut on Piastri, it actually meant that Norris lost the race, because Norris was then, obviously instructed to hand the place back, which which he had to because of all the promises made to Piastri that Norris was not going to be a threat and not everything. In order to keep the peace with Piastri, even though Piastri is quite a peaceful chap, in order to keep the Piastri believing the team, they had to swap them over. But had Norris not been brought in first, I'm sure that Norris, as we saw with his pace in that final stint, and Piastri admitted he was faster as well, Norris, I'm sure, would have just overtaken Piastri and won the race. Piastri is not the sort of person that would push someone up a tree in order to avoid them overtaking. He's no Max. So Norris would have just simply overtaken Piastri and won the race. So they ruined Norris's race by giving him the advantage of bringing him in first, ironically. But yes, they had to do that. If I was Norris, I would have said, yeah, okay, I'll let him past, but not until the end of the race, because I want to make sure that Max Verstappen doesn't come charging through, because Verstappen was hounding Hamilton, just as he had done earlier in the race, and Hamilton had managed to hold him off until Hamilton came in for pits. But there had already been a ding-dong battle between Hamilton and Verstappen earlier in the race. And then when they had round 2 in the final stint, again Verstappen couldn't get past Hamilton. Verstappen swearing, cursing down the phone his engineer, who I think in the end finally flipped and finally turned on Max. Max is so aggressive, unbelievable. And if Max had been in Norris's position at the end of that race, there's no way he would have moved aside to let Piastri through, because Verstappen drives for Team Max, not Red Bull. And in a way, Red Bull like that, because you want a sort of dominant, selfish driver, but at the same time, you want a driver that obeys the rules. But you can't have both, really, can you? Anyway, so yeah, Norris really wanted Verstappen. Strangely, even though he's competing with Verstappen in the championship, Norris would have wanted Verstappen to get past Hamilton quickly and then close down on Piastri, because then Norris could say, well, I'm not going to slow up. I've got a 4 or 5 second lead on Piastri. Verstappen's only a few seconds behind Piastri. If I slow down to let Piastri pass, there's a good chance Verstappen will win this race. And he would have been allowed to win the race then. But because Verstappen didn't get past Hamilton and instead crashed into Hamilton, although Max says it's the opposite that happened, because of that, Norris was not able to use that excuse of, I need to protect against Verstappen. Strangely, that was never mentioned on a radio message. I don't know why Norris didn't say, mind you, I suppose he didn't know where Verstappen was, did he, necessarily? But he might have asked, Norris might have said, look, where's Verstappen? Before I slam on the brakes here to let my teammate through, where's Verstappen? So, anyway, in the end, I think he did do the right thing. He probably regrets resisting for so long. And after the race, he said, I was asked to move over, so I moved over. Yeah, okay. That's not quite how it played out. It was a little bit long-winded, a little bit longer-winded than that. But you've got to toe that line, haven't you? Do you be an aggressive, selfish driver like Verstappen or like Vettel or like Schumacher, and Hamilton has been as well in the past? Do you act like that? You get respect that way, don't you? And the team sort of secretly likes it as well. I think Red Bull secretly liked the way that Vettel kept rubbing dirt in Webber's face and tearing up agreements between them and things like that. Multi-21. I think Red Bull secretly liked that, even though it caused them problems. So a team wants the driver to be selfish and aggressive, but at the same time submissive to what the team wants. But the problem is you can't have both, can you? And that's why there's always these problems all the time. At the moment, Norris is being very lenient. He's being very self-critical. Most races he's self-critical, too self-critical. Although I quite like that, though, because it shows honesty. It doesn't make him slower. It just shows an honest response to questions. Unlike Max, who just stares wide-eyed at the interviewer and says, nope, it's nothing to do with me, with his eyes almost down the stalks. Nope, nothing, not my fault at all, nothing. Let's talk about that Hamilton and Verstappen smack. Now, of course, there will be some people listening to this video, or watching and listening to this video, who will be expecting me to slam Max. But I'm not going to slam Max. I'm just going to say that it was Verstappen's fault, but not intentional. He had more than a car's width. He says that Hamilton was moving in on him. Well, as Nico Rosberg said after the race, someone needs to tell Verstappen that there was a corner there. So obviously Hamilton's going to turn right into the corner. You could argue that Hamilton maybe started to turn too early, possibly, but he didn't jink. He didn't do a sudden jink to the right. He just turned into the corner, and I don't think it was too early. And anyway, there was more than a car's width for Verstappen to get through. You can see it plainly. It's not just a few centimetres more than a car's width. It's a big distance. But the problem is, Verstappen was going too fast and simply locked up, irrespective of whether Hamilton was there. He just locked up, and because of that, he went straight. And of course, Hamilton went straight into Hamilton because Hamilton was turning into the corner. So it was totally Verstappen's fault, but I agree that he should not have got a penalty. Because in my view, it was his wheels just locked up. So I don't think it was Max that caused the accident, but it wasn't intentional, so therefore he shouldn't have a penalty. And he didn't. And I think that was right, that he did not. So if all Max fans out there, I'm saying that I agree that Max should not have had a penalty. Okay? But he did cause it. But he says 100% Hamilton caused it. The radio messages, oh man, that made me laugh. The radio, at long last, that race engineer who just goes by the name of, what's he go by the name of? GP or something, isn't it? He's got like an Italian name or something. I can't remember what it is. Giancarlo or something. Anyway, I think they just call him GP. He normally gets a lot of abuse from Max, but apparently they're best buds. But this time, I think GP's job was made too difficult by Max constantly screaming down the phone. Well, I mean, why it's like he's having a domestic argument in full public. Why would he do that? I don't understand. And as was correctly pointed out after the race, there are other people listening in on those messages that are hearing the same abuse. And when he's attacking the car, he's attacking hundreds of people that have been working on that car, not just his race engineer. Because it wasn't just the race strategy that he was attacking, he was also attacking the understeer, which he doesn't like. Okay, the car had understeer. Maybe this race you won't win, Max. You know. God dear, he's too punchy and too aggressive, and I might get a little bit of grief for saying that, but he is, basically. And there's no way he would have moved over. If he was in Norris's shoes, no way he would have moved over for Piastri. He would have shouted something down the phone, down the radio, and then hung up, basically, and gone on to win the race, and been all wide-eyed afterwards and said, I'm here to win the championship. And Horner would have defended him and said, oh yeah, he's here to win the championship. And, you know, it's just aggressive racing. It's what we're here for. Having said that, I want to reiterate that it would have been unfair, I think, if Verstappen had received a penalty for his clash with Hamilton, because it was just a mistake. It was just a locking his wheels. I want that on record. I'm saying that. Ferrari, yeah, well, Leclerc managed to score some points. That's very good. The Ferrari have been out of it since Monaco, really, since upgrades failed to work in Spain. They've been struggling. They've had to sort of downgrade their car, reboot it before getting back on the track again. If you go backwards, standing still is bad enough. in Formula 1. If you actually go backwards to try and reverse engineer your car to avoid a dodgy upgrade, then that's even worse. But strong performance, and I hope Ferrari obviously finish the season well, because I'm thinking about next year. Even though the car will be, well, it won't necessarily be totally different next year, because there's no big change with the regulations next year. That's the following year, isn't it? Good performance by Tsunoda again. Ricciardo, who had been quick all weekend, slipped up with some dodgy strategy. Look at Aston Martin though. Look, they had to fight together in order to get Stroll that point. Alonso had to defend to get Stroll that 1 point. That's terrible, isn't it? Dear me. Yeah, well, Sauber right at the back, Alpine right at the back. Not a good race for Hulkenberg for a change, this one. Or Albon. Yeah, never mind all that lot. Perez. If there's a way to get him out of the team, I think they will do. I think he's gone after the summer break. It doesn't matter what he does in Belgium, I don't think. And with the amount of pressure that is on him, I can't see how he could possibly put in a good performance. But if he comes like third or fourth, how is that a good performance anyway? I think he would have to win the race by about 25 seconds over Verstappen in order to stand any chance of keeping his place. If they are able to get rid of him legally. In the championship, well, Norris, yeah, what's this now? 76 points. Could have been bigger, of course, could have been bigger. But they did the right thing, but they should have never have brought, they didn't lose Norris the race by telling him to move over, basically. They lost Norris the race by bringing him in first, which then meant he had to move over for Piastri. They brought him in first when they didn't need to bring him in first, to try and cover off Hamilton when Hamilton, as far as I could see, was no threat. Also, Norris himself, of course, made his race very difficult by having a very slow start. He keeps doing it. He's been the quickest driver for about the last 6 races, but he's terrible at any kind of 0 to 60 type start. He's terrible at any of that. And he's just had strategic bad luck, I would say. Because he hasn't had any bad luck with the car, retiring or anything, but it's just been strategic bad luck, you know. Strategy decisions that have just completely blown up in his face. I mean, he lost the Canadian Grand Prix because he was too far out in front in the lead. How ridiculous is that? He was so far out in front, 12 seconds, that when the safety car light thing came on, he was just a few seconds from going past the entry to the pit lane and so missed it. Had he been closer to the drivers behind him, he would have had time to go into the pits and would have probably won the race. But instead, because he was so fast and so far in front, he lost the race. I mean, that is terrible, isn't it? So you can understand Norris's frustration, constantly finishing second and third in races that he should be winning. Perez, oh dear, look, 7th place. It's now been overtaken by Hamilton. Dearie me. Come on, Perez, sort yourself out, Russell. Losing ground to Hamilton. Hamilton's got past him now as well. So Hamilton was 8th, I think, after Silverstone. He's now 6th. Piastri is only 40 points behind Norris, so with 11 races to go, I don't think there should be team orders. It should still be, Piastri should still be allowed to win races. Norris is in front, but only by 40 points. And look at McLaren go. Fantastic. 338. I mean, so, what are they, 51 points behind? And that's going to get closed down extremely quickly, with Red Bull only having one driver at the moment, especially if that one driver is imploding. I mean, maybe Verstappen it helps him to get a little bit angry in the cockpit, possibly. I don't know. But they're definitely going to be... I think we will see a toned down Verstappen in the next race, even if his car isn't performing at 100%. I still think he'll be toned down. But for someone who's won so many races recently in the last few years, it's incredible how angry he gets if he doesn't win one. Amazing. He never gets bored, clearly. Yeah, Mercedes, I'm surprised they're still 80 points behind Ferrari, despite notching up lots of podiums recently, and of course 2 wins recently as well. Sauber still on 0, and it's definitely a 4-horse race, isn't it? We had 5 last year. I thought it was going to be 5 this year. Not at all. Aston Martin are definitely not in the top 5. I bet they would say they are, but they're not. Anyway, so that's my little look at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Verstappen did have a car that wasn't performing well. He had understeer, and he likes a very pointy oversteer car. He doesn't like understeer at all. So I'm defending Max there a little bit as to why he was a bit slower. But the McLarens are the fastest car anyway at the moment. But Max definitely needs to tone it down. And I think it's wrong to suggest that he's not too aggressive. Because his own team seemed to go against him. GP, what is it GP said? GP said you weren't alongside or something. It wasn't to do with that accident. It was an earlier incident with Hamilton, and Max came on the blower and was screaming and shouting and swearing. And actually, he wasn't swearing with that particular message, I don't think. I think he just said, "Oh, you're supposed to leave the car's width." And GP said, "You were not far enough alongside for that, Max." Something like that. So he didn't defend Max. And then later, and I think that's because Max had been swearing at him so much. And then later, when Max really started swearing, when they had that ding-dong, GP said, "I'm not going to get involved in arguing over the radio without, trying to score points with the FIA or the stewards by talking about how the other team has done this and the other team has done that, and that's childish. That's childish. I'm not doing that. That's childish." Now, it sounded very much like he was accusing Verstappen of being childish by wanting that kind of conversation to happen. But it did seem to shut Max up, because I didn't hear any screaming abuse after that in any messages. So it'd be interesting to see what their relationship is like at the next race. Red Bull still love Max, of course, because he is the best driver out there at the moment still, and driving fantastically well, holding the team up, basically, lifting them up, and still driving extremely well, because he's such a good driver. So Red Bull will still love him, even though, despite his, despite the way he is. Right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to subscribe, please do so, or leave a like or a comment, or a tip on the thanks button below the below the video. And I will see you on the very next video, whatever it may well be about. Thank you, and goodbye for now.